Hey friends, do I have a treat for you? Now, if you're going to criticize me for wearing this outfit the same as I did the last video, it's because I'm doing this video 10 minutes later and I'm not subscribing to going and changing my clothes for the illusion that I'm doing this on a different day. Okay, so whenever you see me wearing the same clothes as a previous video, I probably knocked it out within 10 minutes of finishing the last one. One thing that I didn't mention to you with when I opened the Attea by Marco Benedetti is that I had also ordered a second deck, which I'm just as excited about. I was probably a little more excited about the receiving the Attea because it's a facsimile Attea deck. And if you haven't seen my Attea videos, go find them. They're just the most recent videos before this one. I have a video on Marco's Attea deck, which is a facsimile, the closest facsimile deck to an Attea deck that exists. And then I compared Marco's Attea deck to two other Attea publications that I have. However, in the box, I had also ordered another deck by Marco, which is brand new for him, and it is the Pierre Madeni 1709, made by hand. So I want to showcase this deck today. It's a TDM tarot deck, and let's get to it. As many of Marco's decks come, it's a telescopic vertical. Identifying the name of the deck, created originally in Dijon, 1709. So it's an early deck. It's before the Dodal, right? And it's restored by Marco Benedetti, created by hand. With the authority, I guess, or with the blessing of the museum, the National Museum of Switzerland in Zurich, which I presume has the original deck. Now, you guessed it, my next video after this one will be comparing the Benedetti Madeni with the same deck but published by Yves Renaud. But whenever I showcase a deck for the first time, I like to show it by itself. As with just about all of Marco's decks, the cardstock is sublime. It's a textured cardstock. You can see the texture here. And it is also textured on, not as textured on the back, but there's still texture to it, which I think makes them a little thicker. The Attea, but look at, listen. Oh, man. Do you love that sound? If a deck sounds like that, you know it's a dream. You know it's a dream deck. Anyway, I digress. Now, although this is before the Dodal, 1709, the Dodal was 1710, right? We notice that this is not a TDM1 style, but a TDM2, at least in the Chariot. Now, it's important to note that just because it's called TDM1 or TDM2 does not denote how early or late the deck came. There are many TDM2s, right, that are very early. Like the Chauson, I think, is a, if it can be dated to 1672, it's a TDM2, right? Which is the date is contemporary to Noblet, which is TDM1. And the Madeni of, I think, 1740 something, which was probably created by this Madeni's nephew or son or something, is in the style of TDM1. And this is like 30 years earlier. So TDM1 or 2 is not, it does not determine how early or late the deck was made. Okay, Marco has the Fool in the end of the sequence. I usually put it in the front, just for convenience sake. Okay, and we have in descending order, and I left it in the order that Marco sent it. So we have the Queen, the King rather, the Queen, you know, who appears to have the canopy overhang rather than a window. The Knight, my boyfriend. Okay, we have the Suit of Swords. A lot of blondes in this deck. So the additional swords are facing upward, which is interesting. You hear my cuckoo clock? And the last suit of coin. Well, this video is mighty short because I didn't talk too much. So it's under 10 minutes. So I think perhaps I can do a side-by-side with the Yves Renaud variety that I have, publication that I have, of the same deck. Now here, it says that Pierre Madeni was a card master and engraver in Dijon, France, encompassing the years 1709 to 1740. Limited edition of one of the oldest and most beautiful model knowns of the Tarot set of Marseille, based on the unique complete deck preserved in the Swiss National Museum of Zurich, which, as I mentioned, is the deck that Marco used because I think it is the only deck that exists. And okay, and the deck of cards would have been wrapped in a paper kind of thing, which Yves Renaud does, but to get it in and out of the box easily, what I did is I just folded the cloth up and tucked it in the bottom of the box because it gets cumbersome to pull it out every time I want to use the deck. But this would be the similar to how an original deck might have been sold to customers. And Yves always writes a little something. And we have it in English and in French. Oh no. Yes. A little explanatory. And I did put the cards in the same order before the video. Cardstock is completely different. Marco's is, the textured, and then this is more of a slick surface, front and back slick. The backs are not too dissimilar. In fact, they're the same, aren't they? They're very similar. So this perhaps was the back. Maybe it was the original back of the cards. Let me show you the sound. I think I already did. Of the Benedetti, and then it's not as flexible. Okay, so you see that this is not a flexible deck. This deck would most certainly need to be overhand shuffled. This one, although it's made to be a riffle shuffle dream, it might be too. Let me see. I'm not going to shuffle them because I'll have to get them back in order, but I can at least go through the motion. Yeah, I think I could. I think this deck could easily be. I think this deck could very easily be riffle shuffled. So right out of the gate, it looks as though both of these cards, both of these decks really, truly seem to be very close facsimiles. And probably the difference would be the type of card texture that you prefer to handle. They both really, really are close reproductions, if not exact. Maybe the only differences are in whatever the printing technique, results in. I don't always mention differences in words, from what is more correct. But, I don't know French, but I kind of think that's not the correct spelling of the Empress. So the engraver was either, I don't know, I don't want to say they were illiterate, but they made some spelling errors perhaps, or perhaps it was really legitimately an earlier version, of a word. I'm just zooming in on the color. The color is very similar. And you'll see the detail is very similar. Again, I probably will only show the Triumph cards in order to keep this a concise video. And then maybe I'll just quickly flash the pip cards of each deck. Now, I mentioned earlier that obviously this is a TDM2 style, and we saw it, you know, in the lover card, for example. You know, Cupid is not blindfolded, and it's, I think, going in a different direction than a TDM1 might, and then we don't have the scalloped canopy here either. Yves may have given a little bit of refinement, or went in there to like define the face a little bit better, whereas I think Marco is inclined to reproduce it as is. I can't speak for either of them, but that's my impression. Oh, the colors, you know, are spot on. So they both did, you know, a facsimile reproduction. It doesn't appear so they took too many liberties. Even, for example, the details over the letters, the numbers rather, right? So it looks like they retained all the anomalies to a very high degree. The little difference here. But they are both so similar. So as I mentioned, I think the preference that either of you may have would be, you know, a price point. I don't know which one was more expensive than the other. They're probably comparable. And perhaps you might have a preference in cardstock quality, right? Really beautiful. Beautiful cards. I've done a showcasing of this Madeni with the significance of it previously, and I have so many decks. I have now I have over 400, excuse me, not decks, videos. I have over 400 videos at this stage, and you have to kind of dig, if you want to find some of my previous videos. However, I did do a showcasing of the Madeni before. I might even have another. I wonder if I have another version of the Madeni. I might have another version of the Madeni. I don't remember who might have done it, but I might have a third Madeni version. I think, maybe, it's possible. The House of God, instead of the Tower or the Devil. So very, very similar. And I do sometimes enjoy seeing anomalies in spelling. So even the drops are colored the same way in both decks, even with the offset, right? Even with this, the subtlety of an offset. So they're both really very close facsimiles, and they're very similar to one another. And as I mentioned, I think it's really only comes down to a matter of preference of cardstock and price, whatever your price point might be. I don't know which one is more expensive. Okay, so let's quickly just take a look. And let's see. Well, I know what we can do. We can take a look at how thick. Now, well, they seem to be similar in thickness. Oh yeah, they're the same. Maybe Marcos is one card thicker with these cards. And I just showed these, really. And since we know that both of these decks seem to be very close facsimiles of an original, it's probably not necessary to do the side by side. And let's do a quick perusal of these. Okay, friends, I hope you enjoyed this video. Please give me a thumbs up, share me, and subscribe if you haven't already. I appreciate all of that. Until next time, peace, stay well, be kind, and do no harm.